What's up, metalheads? Ready for the mosh pit and wall of death? What? Change your mind? Alright, we'll keep this lesson civil. Today we'll look at the metals and non-metals in the periodic table. First, let's look at the characteristics a metal needs to fulfill. Not every element in the periodic table is a metal. Metals have 4 characteristics. Think of where metals are usually found. For example, inside of wires. This means that a metal must have higher conductivity, which is the first characteristic of a metal. The second characteristic of a metal is that it has high thermal conductivity. This is different than, say, window glass. If it didn't have high thermal conductivity, a metal pan would get hot in a few places if you put it on the stove. No one likes half-cooked food. The third characteristic is deformability. Huh? How can someone change the form of a steel bar? Unlike salts, metals can be relatively easily deformed. Gold, for example, can be deformed into rings or jewelry. The last characteristic is metallic luster. All metals have a similar luster. This is the result of special bonding of the metal atoms. To summarize, metals are good heat and current conductors, deformable, and have a metallic luster. Let's look at the periodic table and examine the types of metals. The first 2 main groups in the periodic table, alkali and alkaline earth metals, are metals. The name says it, but because hydrogen wants to be different again, it doesn't count as a metal. The electrons in the secondary groups are transition metals, so obviously they are also metals. In the third main group, the classification becomes a bit more complicated. Elements such as lead or aluminium are metals. However, for elements such as boron or silicon, it gets complicated. These elements are similar to metals, but they are not electrically conductive. However, they do not have the characteristics of nonmetals either. These elements are instead considered semimetals. They are more similar to metals than nonmetals. The remaining elements are considered nonmetals. For example, carbon and all the noble gases are nonmetals. These elements are brittle as well as bad heat and current conductors. You can tell your grandpa, the periodic table distinguishes metals from transition metals, semimetals, and nonmetals. Very nice! Let's discuss metal bindings next. Consider a metal and a non-metal binding. They would be paired together as a compound. In this kind of compound, metals like to emit electrons. In the case of sodium chloride, for example, the sodium would happily emit electrons. When this happens, the sodium is positively charged and the chlorine is negatively charged. Thus, an ionic compound, or salt, would form. Fun fact, sodium chloride is nothing more than ordinary cooking salt. When we bind several metals, we make an alloy. For example, bronze is the combination of copper and tin. Alloys are much harder than individual metals. Since there are so many different metals, they need to be differentiated from each other. There are a few ways we can do this. First, we can differentiate them by the density of the metal. The density of a metal can be divided into either heavy or light. Heavy metals have high density. Examples of heavy metals include copper, zinc, gold, and silver. If the density is less than 4.5 per cubic centimeters, it is a light metal. Light metals include alkali, alkaline earth metals, and aluminium. Second, we can differentiate metals by dividing them into noble and base metals. Examples of noble metals include gold, platinum, palladium, and silver. Jewelry is also made of noble metals. Noble metals do not get ruined at normal temperatures in air. Chemically, they do not react. They are also even resistant to hydrochloric acid. Some of you are now wondering why your gold earrings still fog up, or why there are often green spots on gold statues. Pure gold would be much too soft for the production of jewelry, so it is often mixed with base metals. These base metals then oxidize, meaning that electrons are released into the air and they fog up or change. Pure gold does not react with air, but the base metals do. Base metals react at normal temperatures with air and oxidize or rust. They can also dissolve in hydrochloric acid. If someone says your chain looks noble, you simply answer, "Yeah, but there are base metals in it." That makes you more likable. Not really. If you want to know more about metallic bindings, just click on our video about this topic. What do you need to remember from today? Metals are good heat and current conductors, deformable, and have metallic luster. The periodic table distinguishes metals from transition metals, semimetals, and nonmetals. A bond between a metal and a non-metal results in an ionic compound. On the other hand, when two metals bind to form a compound, an alloy forms. From a density standpoint, metals can be divided into heavy and light metals. There are also noble and base metals. See you in the next video, cuties!